like to focus on two sides of coin on the topic. One is the cultural aspect. The second is policy, structures, systems, and process. I'll try to use my limited understanding about my birthplace and also some understanding from my work over the last 16 years in the UK. Let's deal with the cultural aspect first. To create tomorrow's Ms. Dixit and tomorrow's Dr. Kondal Reddy type of leaders, the work should start with the girl child at the beginning. In fact, before the birth. Once a girl child is born, the mother and father has a great role to play to make sure that the girl child thinks non-inferior and thinks absolutely equal to a male child. Because the confidence building starts from the tender age. Because at that age, a lot of aspects, a lot of characters are formed within that young mind. And if we do not create the thinking of equality at that age, when you grow up, that genetic memory will start growing, that I am not going to be leader, I'm going to be supporter in the family, and so on and so forth. So the mother and father both have a great role. So is brother and sister at that time. So the work to become unstoppable and to be a winning woman should start at the tender age. Then comes the schooling education. You only need to start your journey today, and you just need to go 50 kilometers any direction, and you will find a village around. And those girl children were given a lower quality of education. You could find several hundreds of examples. They will send their son to a better school, whereas their daughter goes to a much inferior school. It is not a theory, it is a fact. So the work should start at that age. Why a girl deserves much lower quality education than the boy? Those questions should be asked at that age, at that time, because otherwise you lost the time. Why I'm talking villages in particular is, in educated families, things have moved on. For example, if your parents are doctors and engineers or IT professionals, they will treat their children equally in majority of the cases. But if you go into villages, that's not the case. So the policy systems, processes, and also the cultural change has to start at the beginning. So those foundations has to be laid at the beginning. When we come to college education or the marriage and so on, again, the husband, of course, the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, they have a role as well. When I got married and my wife came to the UK, she did a pharmacy degree in India, but she couldn't practice being a pharmacist in the UK because she has to do a one-year university program in the UK to become a pharmacist. I made sure, and also I encouraged her to go to a university. What that meant is we stayed apart for a year. She went to and stayed in the house of residence for a full year. It was painful. We had a son by that time. I looked after our son for a bit of time, but I made sure that she went to a university to complete her postgraduate program and become a pharmacist, because that she became an example for my daughter who is 4 years old. When my daughter plays with her toys, she wants to become a doctor or a pharmacist. She doesn't want to settle down at home or play with toys or Barbie dolls, because that's the change. Because we have to create the role models within our family, within our institutions where we work. So it's quite important. It doesn't mean the education has to stop when we get married, whether it's a man or a woman. Especially women are disadvantaged after their marriage, because a lot of opportunities, whether it's leadership, to become, to study a PhD and so on and so forth, would happen after the marriage. So culturally, those aspects should start. We have to encourage women in our families. I'm not suggesting to men, just men. I'm also suggesting people who are mother-in-laws, father-in-laws, who are going to be grandmothers in future. They have to encourage culturally. Because if we could change our families, the whole society will change very easily. And it has to start from our families. Policies, governments can change a bit through policies, but the actual cultural change, the real change happens within our homes. And I strongly, strongly beg every one of you in this room to remember those words. When a choice comes to actually give a good quality education, good career between your boy or a girl, they have to be actually absolutely equal. And it has to be based on merit. That's what I beg for. Secondly, policy systems and process. And a number of you work in HR departments, leaders in institutions. How many of you actually measure gender pay gap every year? How many of you look at the pay scales of all the women and men and try to find out the differences between that? In the UK, there's a policy to publish gender pay gap. It's amazing how many wonders that has done, just to publish. The government didn't even ask, actually, or force to actually pay equally. They simply asked at the beginning, in the last 2 years, to publish the gender pay gap. Not individual pay of every man and woman, but actually how much women are paid on average in your institution, whether it's a public sector institution, a university, or a large corporation, and how much men are paid on an average. Just asking those difficult questions started change. That simple policy has started change. And suddenly people have started realizing, women in my department are actually paid 20% less than men for doing the same work. So I think government has a phenomenal role to play, and those policies have to be direct. Those policies have to be implemented, communicated well, and that has to be in the institutional policies, whether it's HR policy, whether it's governance, and so on and so forth. So yes, of course, the structures, policies, and pays are important, and I've used gender pay gap as a specific example because that's one of the key things which can make a difference immediately. Finally, I would like to focus on a few suggestions. I would like to thank the work Ivan has doing across India and of course in Telangana, but I think it can go a step further. One of the areas which it could work is to become a think tank for women empowerment, a think tank to study the best practices, to do some research in terms of where the gaps exist, where are the policies in the European Union, United Kingdom, USA, and also look at some of the countries in Africa, to learn where the gaps exist, to actually influence the policy, to actually influence the parliament, to actually influence the policy makers. Doesn't matter which party, which government comes in, the think tank and the lobbying group must work very strongly to influence the policy, because from the policy, results will happen. So those are the two sides of coin I wanted to highlight. One is the family. Without that, doesn't matter how many policies government make, we will not make progress. So the family, the cultural change, the cultural transformation, and of course, the other side of the coin is systems, process, and policies. Thank you very much indeed.